When is the last time that you sat down and studied greatness? I don't mean watched a YouTube video or took a course. I mean, when was the last time you were struck by something that you thought was amazing and sat down and thought, what is it about that thing that made it so great? There's an unfortunate quality about greatness for people that are trying to achieve it, and that is that greatness is noisy. This is what I mean. William Shakespeare, the most famous playwright in the English world, wrote 37 plays throughout his lifetime. However, over 1 million books have been written about Shakespeare's 37 plays. The truth is that it's much easier to write about greatness than to actually generate greatness. What these millions of secondary sources function as are effectively an out to thinking. It's a way to give you an opinion on the work without you needing to actually put any work into that. But the truth is, in order to be great, you need to study the greats. You can't let yourself get swamped by the noise that is inevitably generated by brilliance. Imagine two people that both want to learn something by reading a book. The first person reads through the entire book. They go through page by page, they read every word, they pause when something interesting is written and they think about it and they relate it to their life, and then maybe they write a few notes and then they move on. The other person just read the summary on SparkNotes. Who do you think actually got more from the book? Who do you think is actually going to walk away from having read the book being enriched and having a greater understanding of the world? Is it the person that actually grappled with the material? The person that actually thought about it and let it echo in his subconscious and interact with his other thoughts and experiences? Or is it the person that's just kind of skimmed okay, there's the theme of love, there's the theme of sacrifice, there's this and this and that. What do those things mean if you haven't actually experienced the work? Don't take the easy path of relying on other people to do the thinking for you and tell you what words you should use when you talk about the work. Actually feel it. Actually expose yourself to it. If you want to be a great computer scientist, don't just take courses by people who have never accomplished anything in computer science, but have just basically summarized the documentation for you. Delve into the documentation. Actually look at code that has been written, that has produced great software in the real world. If you want to be a director, don't just watch film analyses on YouTube. Sit down and make it a habit of writing about what it was in the film that struck you, that stirred your soul, that got you interested, got you engaged. What actually was it about the work that did that? If you want to be somebody who delivers great speeches, don't go and look at a YouTube video of somebody telling you, here are the top 5 tips on how to give a good speech. Listen to actual speeches that inspire you, and think about what it was about that speech that inspired you. Because whatever insight that you draw from that, that will stick with you. You've had to work for that. That will be embedded within you. And that will be something that you can actually draw from when you're writing a speech yourself and delivering a speech yourself. But I can guarantee you, those 20, 30 videos that you watch on how to give good speeches, you forgot 95% of the content before you even left YouTube, because you're not putting in the work. You're not putting in the effort. The thing that actually sticks inside of you, the thing that actually becomes embedded in you. That is what the work does. This point extends to every single act of creation that you can think of. If you want to create something great, you need to be interacting with instances of greatness in that domain. Even if you don't think of yourself as a creative person or someone that produces things, the reality is that all of us are creators. At the very least, you're a creator of experiences, a creator of experiences for other people. If you see somebody that makes you feel great, and you think for a second about what is it about that person that makes them so fascinating, so interesting, and so pleasant to be around, and you can take just 1% of the things that you think of and actually incorporate them into your own personality, you can become whoever you want to be. You can become as interesting as you want. The only limit is your ability to perceive that greatness in others and then consciously adapt it into yourself. Now, going to the derivative instead of the original work is not just some abstract thing that happens in school when you're reading the textbook instead of reading the actual original play. If you ever go to ChatGPT and you ask a question like, how do I make a great website? That's an example of you going to the derivative instead of going to the original source. Because what ChatGPT is it's a culmination, it's a summary of what 1,000 different people have written on the internet about what it means to make a good website. Much less commonly in the modern day do we come across a great website and go, oh my goodness, this is great. Let me take note of this. Let me take note of what it is about this website that makes it so appealing. And that is what I think is the most valuable habit to develop in order to be able to produce greatness yourself. Now, the word study gets an unfortunate rep because of the way that it's used in school. For most people, the idea of studying effectively just means memorizing information that you don't even particularly care about. But the truth is that studying is the deepest form of intellectual work. It is analysis. It is breaking down greatness, breaking down what inspires you into its constituent components, and understanding, unraveling what it actually was about the great work that you saw that struck you so deeply. If studying in your mind is instead just reading through a textbook that was given to you, that some guy wrote and was set as curriculum for your program, that you don't even particularly care about, then you're missing out on the benefit of what studying actually brings. Now, I'm not going to make some crazy radical claim that all secondary sources are useless. That's obviously not true. A secondary source can add to the original work, but my argument is that in the modern world, we are completely bombarded by distillations and derivatives of great work, rather than spending the majority of our time actually feeling the great work itself. The 4 dangers of distancing yourself from great works like this are that 1, you're not actually thinking about the work yourself and you're not actually analyzing it yourself and doing the hard work. 2, the work is inevitably being passed through filters every time that it's going from the original author through to the point that it actually gets to you. 3, if you're always reading about greatness and great works, rather than actually reading them, you are isolating the work from your personal context. 4, derivative works of greatness kill the spark that existed in the original great work. So the first danger of distancing yourself from greatness is that it means that you never have to think about the work yourself. You're always delegating that thinking to a different person. Now, when some author, John Person, wrote his analysis of Hamlet, he was needing to actively think about the work that was in front of him. And he needed to see what was it that resonated with him in order to write his analysis. But when you read this person's analysis, you are just reading the words that he wrote and you're just ingesting them. You're not actively feeling the emotions that that person felt when they were analyzing the work. What this means is that essentially you actually have no idea what he's talking about. You just know the words that other people use to describe the work. You don't actually feel those words yourself. You don't actually understand. You know all of the terminology, you know all of the noise, you've memorized them. You can probably tell somebody the exact same things and make it seem as if you do know the work. But in reality, you've never actually interfaced with it. You've never actually felt it. You've just learnt the words for it. And that means that you don't truly know it. And that deep internal knowing is what actually generates greatness. It's what you actually draw from when you're producing something yourself. Similarly to that point, every analysis that is done by a different person is done from their perspective. It's done through the perspective of what they find interesting and what it is about the original work that resonated with them. But you're your own person. You are unique. You grew up in a different context. You've been exposed to different works. You've gone through different hardships in your life. So his analysis and your analysis of the work are bound to be different. That which impacted him is bound to be different to that which impacted you. But if you're just relying on somebody else to do all of that dirty work for you, then you're not actually learning anything. you're just memorizing. To produce Hamlet, Shakespeare had to go through a whole lot of life experience and training and working on honing his craft. Now, from the million different ideas that Shakespeare would have had when he was thinking about producing Hamlet, he had to distill those ideas into a physical work of art, into something that existed in the real world and was represented by a set of words. So already you're having this distillation occurring. You're going from Shakespeare's thoughts, his inner world, his mind, his emotions, being reduced into a series of words on a piece of paper. Even though that very process is already reductionary, we're already getting just a tiny slit of Shakespeare's mind. What is left is groundbreaking, it's touching, it's emotional enough that it generates feelings in other people that read that work. Now imagine from that great work, 1 million different people have read it and then have written their own analysis of it. So that work generated emotions, feelings in those people's minds, and then they distilled those feelings and those emotions into yet another derivative work, into yet another distillation of their ideas and their thoughts when they were reading what was already a distillation of Shakespeare's thoughts. So what ends up happening is you end up getting more and more of a derivative of a product. You started with the original raw brilliance in Shakespeare's mind, and then you distilled it. You derived something from it. You went down and down again through layers of analysis to the point that it reaches you, and you're reading an analysis of somebody's reading of Shakespeare's brilliance. By the time that the raw greatness has reached you, it's already passed through 2 different minds at the very least. Now, what's even funnier is that your textbook probably has excerpts from people's analysis of Shakespeare's work. So that's a 3-way distillation that's occurring, from Shakespeare to the original analyzer to the curator of the textbook, who then put that material in front of you to read. Every time you pass down another layer, a little bit of the original spark that made the work so great in the first place is lost. You move away from it. It adds noise to the original product. Humans are creatures that like to organize information. We don't find it useful to be presented with a whole plethora of experiences. We like to distill things into a nice, clean, orderly collection of terms. And that's fine, and that's useful, but those terms only ever mean anything if you understand how they got distilled from the original work. If you understand the original sensations from the original work that got distilled into those terms and categories. Now, obviously, secondary sources, derivative works, what I've been talking about in this video, have a purpose. They can be useful. Firstly, it gives you a different person's perspective on the work. But I would argue that understanding other people's perspectives on a work is not as important as having a perspective on the work yourself. The other valid argument for why secondary sources or derivative sources of original works might still be useful is that it can make the work more accessible to people that might not be able to comprehend it otherwise. I think this was a fair point 5 years ago. But now we're in the era of large language models, of ChatGPT. You can easily be experiencing some sort of work, and the moment that something confuses you, you can so easily just go to ChatGPT and write, okay, I don't understand what this means. Can you please explain this in simple terms? You should always prioritize exposing yourself to the work and hitting that roadblock yourself, instead of having all of those roadblocks smashed for you by somebody else who's done all of the thinking on your behalf. To become great, pay attention to what grabs your attention, and pay your respect to the people that have managed to inspire you.